so sorry to have to cut your questions short. There's so many wonderful questions and ideas and thoughts being provoked and evoked here with this event. So I'd like to now move into the panel discussion portion of our event. And I will, we know our keynote speaker, Dr. Duprey, thank you very much, wonderful keynote, very concise and succinct. I didn't get a chance to say that, and with giving real world case scenarios and examples and applications. That's really what this is all about. So thank you very much. I will move on to introduce my name is David Hall, by the way, if anyone that doesn't know me. I'm Managing Director of AKT Health, USA. And I will move to introduce our panelists. So I will begin with Dr. Usman Iqbal, MD, MPH, MBA. He's Chief Medical Officer at Jules Pharma. He has 15 years of experience in R&D, medical affairs, value, and access. He's led development programs with a focus on value-based innovation, has expertise in neuroscience and oncology, and has been recognized in marquee who's who in America for expertise in biopharmaceuticals, medical economics, and public health. Adriano Garcez, Bachelor of Science, Master of Science MBA, Director at ZS Boston, 15 years in healthcare and medical devices, with expertise in evidence generation, business transformation, and market access. He's led programs for top pharma and medical device companies, navigated FDA submissions for software as a medical device, SAMD, and holds a biotechnology engineering degree, an MBA in advanced studies in public health and IT leadership. And Aditya Tallapragada, MBA, is president of AKT Health, has 18 years experience of international experience in healthcare and technology, the co-founder of Medifact, a blockchain startup that focuses on medical aspects of blockchain, Internet of Medical Things, wearables, IoT, machine learning, aims to improve patient centricity with impact health products, and has expertise in market valuation, financial models, and digital transformation. He's passionate about innovation, education, investment into healthcare startups, focusing on improving patient experience. Wonderful. Thank you to our panel. So let's just move into our discussions. Yeah, you can give them a round of applause if you'd like. So I'd like to continue on Dr. Duprey's excellent keynote here on extending real-world evidence. There was a few questions I noticed that came up as well during the break on real-world evidence AI use. And there's some questions about moving beyond patient recruitment. And I'd like to ask Dr. Duprey to address how we might do that, the ways of increasing efficiency and effectiveness in clinical trials, such as applying technologies to trial management, monitoring outcomes, analysis, and other benefits to the process.
So, I would say it's not so much moving out of patient recruitment as in a lot of those things preceded patient recruitment. Real-world evidence of analysis of data, analysis of real-world evidence, big pharma companies often have this capacity. They are sitting on years, decades worth of historical data of use of their drug. They have it already in a structured way that AI can access, and they can send an AI at it in order to find new relationships that they didn't have and then get their drug on market for a new specification. This has probably been one of the first applications of AI that actually reached a useful level in the clinical life of a product. I don't think any drug identified that way has yet arrived to approval, but I would say probably one of the first things that's going to happen in the future. Now, as The other pieces that you mentioned in your question are much more experimental, I would say, at this stage. There's definitely a need and there's definitely a solution. So you're mentioning operational aspects of trial management. Which sites do we activate? Which study site do we activate? Do we need to activate a new study site in this new location because we have data pointing us that there could be a higher concentration of patients that are suitable for the clinical trial? These are very real questions that especially large CROs are starting to ask, from my knowledge, and they're starting to incorporate that into their operations. Another point that's important to mention is, do we want to keep working with this study site? Because imagine you have, thinking, you're a large CRO, you have a history with a given site, and you want to know, well, are they going to give us good data in the future? That's a very typical AI forecasting problem that you can try to solve that way. I am aware of some programs that way in major CROs that are being developed. Here, I would say they're more in the prototyping stage and they're evaluating whether they give them better outcomes. The whole field of clinical stage AI is relatively new, again, with the exception of real-world evidence analysis, which have been one of the first applications.
Okay, thank you. Any of our other panelists want to jump in, give your point of view perspective from where you sit?
Thank you. I think I would like to add to that. Taking a step back and thinking about the reason we do RWE with AI is that they work in where RWE ends, AI starts. You can't have a better handle on AI unless you have real world evidence data. And where by RWE I mean regulatory grade data sets. If you remember Flatiron, which was a database company that was acquired by Roche, they basically did human extraction of all the medical records that you saw in the presentation what AI did. They put 700 chart abstractors onto it and built a database that was focused and very fit for purpose for 7 tumors. And then they obviously, it was such a rich database that they got later on acquired by Roche. So that's just the aspect of real world evidence where you have to develop regulatory grade data sets and high quality data that AI can actually utilize to actually function. If you don't have the right data sets, then AI wouldn't really, whatever algorithms you apply, it's just not going to lead to anything tangible from that perspective. Now coming back to the question, if you have, let's assume, regulatory grade data sets, which means that you have at least 5 to 6 databases talking to each other. So we talk about a hospital data set. Let's say if you have a patient that went to a physician in an outpatient practice, which is not part of that hospital database, that patient record would not be in that hospital. Let's say if the patient got hospitalized in a different network system, that would not be in that system. So you need to start with claims database, which is the insurance database. Because the patient's healthcare system can change, they can go to different doctors, the insurance is still the same. So their healthcare insurance database, that's called claims, and that provides a 30,000 view of the patient picture, so that you have everything that's considered from that perspective, so the continuity of care. Then you apply it with medical claim, or with medical hospital data set that we talked about, and then we talk about genetic information and all of that. So let's say you have a regulatory grade data set. Then you have the ability to influence the clinical trial on so many levels beyond patient recruitment. You can actually see what the patients are doing in the real world, map the patient journey, and bring those learnings back into the trial design. Again, we talked about in the presentation about subgroups enrichment. Where are the subgroups where there are the most unmet needs? And let's just enrich that within the clinical trials. What are the standard of care, the comparatives? What are the value-based endpoints? There's so much that you can do from that perspective, and I believe I'm going to touch base that in detail. But there's a lot that is happening beyond patient recruitment, but that is happening in the context of RWE talking to AI as brothers from that perspective.
Can I ask a question there? Can you just extrapolate in the claims? I'd imagine the claims would be all essays and experiments that were done on the patient. Is that fair?
Sorry?
The claims database that you're talking about, so I'm assuming these are all the assays the client, the patient had at a hospital. Is that right? Not necessarily.
The claims is.
Yeah, could you define this? Because I'm just
So
ignorant.
claims is the healthcare insurance data set. So we
Right.
have healthcare insurance.
Yeah,
So any healthcare service that you utilize, someone has to pay for it.
right,
So it goes into the healthcare insurance data. So you went and got hospitalized, you saw a physician, you did a lab test. You wouldn't have to go and tap into different data sets. You would go into the insurance data to see whether that patient did that.
Sorry.
So-
You won't get the results for that.
Sorry to interrupt. We have to move on in the interest of time. We're going to have audience questions over here at the microphone, just following this panel. So I need to move on. We have 4 questions here, one for each panelist. So thank you very much. Those wonderful questions. We want to move to scalability of RWE, real-world evidence, and AI-driven models, applying to product life cycles, and not only scaling regionally, but scaling geographically in the U.S., in Europe, potentially even remote areas of the U.S. There's 40 million remote Americans that live over 2 hours from a doctor. Other parts of the world. Adriano, I think you might be the best to start this discussion.
Yeah, I think there are certain points that were made here that will resonate with some folks and not with others. But I think if we take a step back, just to put a framework together where we have the end-to-end evidence generation journey, where we start very early stage in leveraging real-world data to design the trials and the protocols that have the best chance at succeed. And for instance, at our company, what we do is we pull data from all these different data sources, so FDA data, clinicaltrials.gov data, where we are able to then extrapolate for a certain therapeutic area, for a certain population, what are the type of study designs that will have the most chance at succeed. What is the timeline for certain endpoints to be able to be collected effectively, and all that informs prior to the stage that Dr. Duprey's product addresses, which is patient matching. We start addressing it way earlier by taking all that data and designing the best protocol possible. Then the claims data that's it's today. There are numerous data vendors from whom we can have access to claims data based on procedure codes, drug codes, intervention codes, what is being paid to the hospitals, right, based on the care they are providing to the patients. We take all that data and we are able to see what are the sites that are really providing care for those patients with those conditions, for those indications that we want to prove as part of those studies, right? So before even engaging with the site, we are able to see what is the patient distribution with all that real-world data. What is the patient distribution that matches our inclusion and exclusion criteria for the trials? We have a nationwide list of where those patients are, what are the attending doctors, what are the healthcare organizations that are delivering care, and we create a short list of the sites that we will go after then for this patient matching. This allows us to do one thing versus traditional trials. Like Dr. Duprey brought it up, traditional trials, normally you reach out to a reputable organization and you ask them, hey, I know that you have research in this area, but how successfully have you been? Do you have the right patients? And they will tell you yes, right? And you as a sponsor, then you start the study and the rate of enrollment doesn't meet the promise, right? Doesn't meet the forecast. And AI can help you gather all this real-world data and really quickly define what are the high-performing sites, what are the ideal protocols, and then you can transition to a solution like this to further refine the
Thank you. Thank you. Abby, would you like to maybe add anything to add to this? 1 minute. Okay. Let's move on in the interest of time here to the future, promising RWE AI clinical research out there. There's a lot going on, drug development, patient care. Maybe Dr. Iqbal, would you like to address this again? And if someone else would like to, one of the other panelists like to do maybe a 1 minute follow-up.
There's so much going on, how much time do we have?
1 or 2 minutes.
Well, the point is, and as I said, RWE and AI working in concert, but the point is, there's so much going on, and where the future, I think, lies, there are 3 or 4 key areas. First of all, before even going into the clinical trials, taking a step back to understand the real world unmet needs. We are producing so many Me-Too drugs right now, and 80 to 90% of the drugs are not meeting their sales forecast, and they're like wide impact. And the reason is that we need to do a better job in identifying the right targets, which are tied to unmet needs in the real world, and that's where RWE and AI can come into play. Now, once the trial has started, there are so much complexities in terms of the data, the analysis, the interpretation. That's where AI comes into the picture. Many times we have, in early clinical trials, we have preclinical to clinical translation, we have early efficacy data, but we don't know how successful that's going to be. So now we can apply AI-based techniques. One of them is Bayesian statistics, where you actually construct a prior to develop a posterior equation. Now we have hierarchical interaction models. We have predictive modeling where, depending on the target, depending on the drug molecule, the patient eligibility criteria, and the trial, we can actually predict the success of the study, whether it's going to go into phase 3 or not. So whether it's going to be an early kill or whether they're going into phase 3. Then we're talking about, in the presentation, we talk about digital twins. What is that? That is so much important in rare disease, and I think we're going to expand that concept in rare disease clinical trials. You have, for rare disease, you have you can maximum get 50 patients. You can dedicate that to placebo, or you can dedicate that to treatment. But what about just dedicate all of that to treatment, you enhance your sample size, and create an external control arm based on AI? And that's what's happening right now, and I think it's going to continue to do that with final validation from FDA. So there's a lot that's happening, and I think it's just going to be an explosion. At the same time, ability to innovate has to have the cautious balance in terms of standardization and precision and rigor.
Thank you very much. I'd like to move on to how we might integrate into clinical trials. There's a lot of questions came up. If you change one endpoint, it's going to change the entire workflow, the processes of the clinical trial, the entire system, the IT governance, SOPs, training. Adi, I'd like for you to ask you to speak about some real-world case studies and examples of how we might overcome these challenges, how we might actually integrate. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, my experience is mostly in Asia, especially in Japan. We have been trying to implement AI-based trials, or even from the sales side. The biggest challenge has been is how to pick up those use cases and then give them a value, and how quickly you can deliver those use cases. That has been the biggest challenge. So we initially started to implement the 5-point case study, which first we focus on what is the use case that we would be going on. Then we looked into what is the internal skill sets that we had in the company, what is the external resources or we should actually get into it. Then we went to see what is the data collection. So the real world data, we don't have legacy data systems integration, internal data integrations, and then after that we went to pick up what is the technology that we use. Because initially when I first started into this space in 2017, 2018, first thing when I went to the client and then when we spoke about AI, they said, what is the product that we have to purchase? But then, no, it doesn't start with the product. It starts with, oh, I have this product, what can we solve? So initially that was the start, but later we realized that, this product will solve patient recruitment, this product will solve the, sales force optimization, this product will solve hiring. But it didn't work out that way, and then slowly we started to implement a structure where we came up with the use cases, the key performance indicators for that use case, and then what is the time to value. Then we came up with the skills that we need to develop internally, the data that we need to collect, the technology that we need to implement, and the overall organization structure that we have to implement to actually make a successful process in order to implement it. This is not exactly about real world evidence or a decentralized interface. It was a general area that we actually tried in. We haven't been successful yet because there are so many gaps in which the data keeps on changing, and then we are coming up with new products on how we gather that real world evidence, how we actually implement that new generative AI kind of models. There's always huge gap, and then so many collaborations are required in order to make this successfully work out, but we are still working it out. And then this is my first visit to Boston to learn how companies are actually implementing this AI or the real world evidence and whatever, and take it back to Asia and actually make it successful. That's one of the main reasons I'm here.
Well, we're glad you made the long trip. Thank you for being here. You touched on some other points I had thought of, right? The legacy systems, untangling those legacy systems, and that's another kind of a tough challenge. But thank you for sharing those experiences. Anyone else want to jump in on this point, or do you have a follow-up?
Actually, I have a question because last 6-7 years in Asia, that this CMO, the Chief Medical Officer, the medical affairs teams, the clinical research has been like a very push forward in most of the companies. And then what is their exact role compared to the marketing teams in implementing these strategies in the entire organization?
Great question. Thank you.
So medical affairs is something that is interspaced between commercial and R&D. It's supposed to have a dual perspective. It reports to R&D because in the US, from a compliance perspective, they cannot report directly to commercial. They cannot talk about sales, revenues, nothing. But at the end of the day, product launch is a medical launch. So they basically work hand in hand with commercial to understand what the market is, what kind of messaging, product, scientific training, and all of that. They work in collaboration with that. But at the same time, where medical affairs is changing is they're bringing all of the real world insights back into R&D, because the R&D folks are so much focused on clinical trials. They don't understand the market. So commercial understands the market, but from a compliance perspective, they can't talk to R&D. So medical affairs is the bridge. And the medical affairs, so they have physicians, they have RWE guys, they have HR, all kind of reporting to it. So medical affairs serves as a bridge, bringing all of the external market insights into R&D in terms of where do you want to go in terms of indication, prioritization, how the trial is going to be designed, and then what kind of messaging needs to be happening coming from the evidence to be able to shape the market. So that's how it's structured within the US and in Europe.
How about the IT governance part into this process? Basically, how we can actually bring in this AI, the security aspects when we are connecting?
That's a very good question, and it's all, and our folks can jump on to provide that perspective, but just a quick answer. IT governance is interested. There's R&D informatics, which specifically handles R&D functions because it's a domain-specific thing, and then medical affairs, it's medical operations that handles that, and in commercial, it's a whole different. So there is a joint platform across the company, but then there are separate subcategories depending on the domain level expertise that's needed across the function. Folks?
Yeah, so very important thing if you're trying to do AI, and your AI team needs to have access to those various databases, to those various sources, because pretty much anything can go into an AI model. And there might be but anything can go into an AI model, but it needs to be done at scale. So it's important that these things are accessible to the people doing AI. And that's also a place where a lot of companies that have traditionally worked in very siloed way with no standardization of data from the company are failing at developing AI, because then their AI team good at that, and then they take of different quality that's not annotated. So how do they train the model from that? And yeah, the traditional way of doing data is not always fit for AI, and a lot of companies are realizing the pain that it is. But it's also worth it because the power of AI that you can deploy once you've gone through that effort is also massive.
These silos across different functions are the biggest challenge, at least in big pharma, as you pointed it out, because of these silos, you need integration, end-to-end integration across different data sets coming from different sources. And even within a single organization, these are fragmented, and then collecting and integrating them is the biggest challenge. That's a very valid question.
Yeah, we've seen that even in the commercial teams, the salespeople, they are not gathering the data properly, and then we are trying to create an optimization model based on the data that has been collected for 10, 15 years, and nothing has been working out to create a model there. So I think I can understand the data collection, the data gathering, even the real world data collection has the biggest challenge.
And that's where AI can really help to develop an overlapping common data dictionary in terms of what are the variables that are relevant across all the three organizations, because there's so much data that is captured across different functions, but has the same kind of platform, has the same kind of background, and basically develop a common data dictionary, a common data model that basically interfaces all of the key functions and develop that as a single cohesive integrated platform. That's the biggest challenge. AI can help that, but it requires scaling, optimization, and obviously a lot of learning.
And we recently started to slightly work on healthcare part as well, like electronic health records. There is no single patient identity there. So that's one of, we can't connect the data from different systems and talk to each other. So one of the biggest challenges that we see is the patient inter-patient data is not connected.
In the US, we have addressed that. There's a so all the data is de-identified. What you get is tokenization. It's called a process called tokenization, where every patient within each database. So basically, you bring all the databases into a single platform. Then there's a separate committee, separate team that does the de-identification and then links these data sets through a single token. So every patient has a unique patient identifier, and you link it. So let's say the last 4 digits of the social security, the last name, the birth date of birth. You still don't know the exact patient, but there are algorithms which have 99% accuracy. So we've been able to link these patients across a unique patient identifier, but it's still a large challenge.
Thank you. Fabulous discussion. I wish we could continue. Let's move on to our fifth and final question. This is open to all of our panelists. We're going to move into risk management strategies. This is, of course, something that comes up quite often for AI adoption in clinical trials. This is, perceived, it's a novelty or perceived. There are a lot of perceived risks out there in data privacy, ethical concerns, regulatory compliance, insights. How can we best manage these risks? And I'll open this up to any of our panelists.
I can share some thoughts. So for what we've been seeing, for the trials that we are running, for our pharmaceutical sponsors, any research that is done with AI, with access to real-world data as part of the study design, it needs to be within a quality management system and a validated system. So there is no way that a system that is not fully validated and not prepared to receive data, real-world data, clinical data, patient-reported data, clinician-reported data, if the system is not prepared to handle that, to normalize the data in CDISC analytical standards for reporting out on the results, there is no way that this data can be used for regulatory purposes and even for market access purposes. And that's one of the big challenges that our trial sponsors have, is that they don't have these systems in-house that abides to all of the SOPs, all of the requirements to handle this new type of data and to link it in-house, right, into one single patient stream. So the industry is outsourcing to solution providers, right, that have a compliant architecture, that have the right data partnerships. There are multiple from multiple sources. that understand the data collection process, that understand the data cleanup, that understand the data report out. And this is the new model because it's too much to develop in-house. Right? And then there's another thought I wanted to share. When we think about early stage designing these experiences, this evidence journey, it's the planning is everything, right? So there are evidentiary objectives for regulatory clearance, for patient adoption, for physician adoption, right? And the data, the real-world data that is required for each of these cases is different, right? Regulatory is more safety and clinical. Market access is more healthcare utilization data that can be extracted from claims data, right? From ABT feeds, right? For medical affairs and physician adoption, the kind of information that they care about is ease of use of the solution, integration with traditional routes of care. Then for the patient is safety, ease of use, clinical impact, right? So all the data that goes into these different use cases is very different. But having that compliance, quality managed systems with all the right data controls, it's critical for the success of any trial and then for the operations, for the implementation. And just one final note is, if you've been looking at the news with the FDA, and now going to Europe 2 weeks ago, the Commissioner Cliff went to talk with the European Medicines Agency to discuss the challenge that is to have normalized standards for what the quality management system should look like for AI applied to medical products. And now the effort is that in a couple of months, new guidelines will come to light in order to guide us on what those systems, what kind of validation those systems need to have, what kind of data is acceptable for clearance, for regulatory clearance, for market access, and for the other use cases I mentioned. And this will allow also for a very important thing, is to solve an unmet need, that is to optimize the output of these studies for global scale. So meaning that a study that produces evidence here has the same standards of quality that are accepted in Europe. So the validation, clinical or economic validation that is done here with AI also can be accepted in the European Union and vice versa.
Thank you. I think in the interest of time, wonderful discussion. Thank you for holding your questions. We'll now open up the audience portion of the question. Do you want to, Fiona will bring a mic around if you want to just raise your hand and if you have the question. I know we had quite a few questions there before. Hopefully you still have them. So you just want to raise your question. If you raise your hand, Fiona will bring around the mic.
I think I'm going to make a general comment. AI is coming and it will be there in the future, but probably it's too early right now. In my view, I think I think in the audience, those people are experts. I'm not sure how many people understand the intricacies. I certainly don't about the use of AI in clinical trials. And until the time we do understand that, it's going to be difficult to adopt in generalities. It also seems that this is another layer, adding another layer of complexity to clinical trials and cost, which is always the big factor to justify with your CEOs and CFOs and people at the high end. Because this is, to me right now, is exploratory. It's putting making a cost center which is not producing much returns right now. For an example, one of the biggest expenditures for pharma is drug development, and the outcome is drug registration, new drug registration. That's what brings in money. Can some of these things, some of these things acceptable to regulatory authorities? I don't think not yet. Some of the examples which have been said. So this is where some of the, now they may be applicable for commercialization and so forth. When you get to the stage, some of the information on patient level data coming from insurance company or third-party payers and users and so forth, those databases. But for regulatory purposes, it's difficult.
Great questions. Anyone want to field that?
Just one quickly.
Okay, you very quick, yes.
I believe you certainly have good points. We're still scratching the surface, and we still don't know the future trajectory. But AI has been used historically in clinical development for the good part of the last decade, and especially in terms of Bayesian statistics. And early clinical trials, especially when it comes to pharmacology, modeling, toxic kinetics, preclinical to clinical translation, how do we end up with humanized models? A lot of that data from animal to human is extrapolated through AI and through Bayesian statistics. Early clinical data, efficacy, how do we extrapolate it? Predictive modeling around effect sizes. All of that has happened. Now it has taken into a different level of investment. The reason we don't know the ROI and the reason we don't have any examples, all of that is proprietary. You have adaptive aspects within a clinical trial that will not come out in the public domain. It's extremely proprietary.
And importantly, essentially on new technologies day, when Uber started, there was no regulatory framework. There was no known application for that. No one thought they would go anywhere. And they're still around, and I believe they're profitable by now. But it took them a while to get profitable. And there's a possibility that AI will follow the same path, and where the early adopters will have that early start that will allow them to be ahead of people who come in later once it's a more proven situation. That means that there's been also examples of abject failure of new technologies being planned. So you don't know, but also something worth trying.
But one point is that we have a very strict regulatory and compliance aspect that we don't see in traditional IT and Uber models. It's a very different aspect. So it's going to take a lot of time, and we'll have to navigate through a lot of aspects to even futuristically extrapolate.
A good amount of time.
Sorry, I'm just going to piggyback off this quite a question, but I'm going to piggyback off of what both of you said in the answer to, I think AI is one coming here. It has been there for a while. And to your point, Usman, AI is not magic, it's math. And math has been around for a really long time. So I think it's the application and the technology that we have now the technology has evolved to a point that allows us to use it and apply it to these areas. We always have early adopters in every piece of technology, and I think we're kind of, in having this conversation, a little ahead of the curve, but I think that's a robust conversation to have so that we know where we're going before, and to the point of building policies and regulatory frameworks as we're doing and experimenting and innovating
And the investment.
And investment. No innovative technology has ever seen a return on investment.
That's the biggest challenge.
There's a lot of investment.
There's a lot of variables in this space, and it's still growing. We haven't quite identified all these variables.
The thing that is affecting negatively this field is the hype. And we need to make sure that we have a very cautious balance between innovation, what's possible, what's doable, and what is something that's futuristic. And we're taking a lot of things that's futuristic as possible as well.
Well, this is the biggest challenge. I think you mentioned, when you mentioned integration across functions. I mean, it's not there. It's going to take, and it's been tried. And it's not worked. And when it's going to happen, I don't think I will see in my lifetime. Having systems, validating
You just
systems.
applied predictive analytics to your
I can share some examples of with you.
My question is specifically for Usman. I think you talked a lot about RWE data sets and what you put into AI algorithms for clinical efficacy management and stuff like that. My question is around the data set management. Like, when you create those data sets, how do you know like what's enough? You know, at one point, the precision levels will increase like 90-95%. But to give you an example, like severity grading in the case of IoT is very difficult. And in that case, you don't know how much data you need and how much money you're going to spend, especially in the creation of that real world data, until you feed them algorithms and finally they will spit out something. Is there a way to predict how much data you usually need? And from the training and like medical perspective, you know, as a doctor speaking from medical training and that perspective, how difficult is it going to be?
Biggest challenge. Because why do you think I mentioned the name regulatory grade data sets? And why do you think I mentioned the example of Flatiron? They worked on very select few indications, did a really good job through human extraction, and that created the data set. So what we call that is fit for purpose regulatory grade data sets, where you have to look at, it is not at the portfolio level, it has to be at the indication level. And then you basically map out with an end in mind, what the data variables do you need? If it's mutational tumor that you're assessing, unless you have genomic and mutational data, your data set is useless. You can have claim, whatever, as you pointed out. So you have to have an end in mind with all of the data dictionary first put in place as to what you will need. For that, you have to talk to R&D, commercial, medical, all of that. Once you've created that, then you go and partner with external entities. That's who can actually bring those data sets, specific data sets into a single de-identified platform. This can take decades. One of the examples is Amgen. They started working in 2010. They have a proprietary data set. It's called OSCER. It's oncology specific. You can look it up. OSCER. It's proprietary, and they have the ability to map 50 to 60% of the oncology patients tied to their drug. They exactly know what's going on with those patients, how many patients are there in the market, the outcomes. They worked on it in 2010. I was part of that team, and they're still working on it even right now. It's continuous development. But what I'm saying is those proprietary data sets right now are being developed as we speak, but it's a decade-long project. It's not easy, and that's why we're still far, far behind. And the thing is, unless you have those regulatory grade data sets, you cannot jump on the bandwagon of AI. It's a prerequisite for that.
I can cover pretty well.
Okay. Well, we have a question. I think we have, 3 minutes? So please, sorry.
So I've got kind of like a question and an observation. For the last 20 years that I've been in the pharmaceutical industry, we've been using algorithms to do cost estimation, resource estimation, time to market. One of the presentations presented that enrollment delays are one of the biggest contributors to delays in time to market. And so artificial intelligence can be applied prior to the start of the trial, for recruitment, for ways that you can make the time to market reduced, which is a huge issue in the drug development process. So I'm saying it's post-trial, there's data, which has a lot of data privacy issues and sharing, and basically patients will have to give up their right to privacy in order for their data to be in a database that's available for consumption for artificial intelligence. But I think we're using the term artificial intelligence, but it's been around for, just as Usman said, it's been around a long time, and we called it algorithms. And so I think this artificial intelligence is an opportunity to leverage what we've already been doing in Excel spreadsheets in a centralized way, and not all of it will fall under data privacy, because a lot of it can be used to shorten the time to market and the recruitment process and in even like randomization it's been used as an algorithm, so again, artificial intelligence is just a big word that we're using now for what we've kind of been intuitively doing in Excel spreadsheets.
Good point.
I just want to point out, to add on, many times it may not be artificial intelligence, connected intelligence, where you get leveraging powerful analytics, leveraging the cloud, and different data sets coming together to talk to each other, and developing algorithms that actually make sense in terms of your throughput aspects. That's connected intelligence. That's not artificial intelligence. It's a much, much broader thought process. But that's where I challenge a lot of AI experts, but that's not actually AI, it's connected intelligence.
We used to call it machine learning mostly.
Machine learning can be AI, cannot be, but connected intelligence is where now we have the ability and power of cloud, big data sets, and we can connect them and link them to talk to each other. That talking to each other, you're not creating any learning, large language model aspects. You're basically connecting them and assessing them through an algorithm which is powered through powerful analytics. That's connected intelligence. That's not artificial intelligence.
Wonderful, thank you. We have one more. We have a question? Okay, we have a question back here.
My question is for Duprey. So, do you have any plans to move globally? So, if yes, there's one challenge. There are some countries like where patients walk in to physicians, and even physicians, they doesn't do any deep investigation regarding their existing diseases or something like that. So, in that cases, even patients and physicians doesn't report their existing conditions. So, if you want to collect data from that areas, so what's your plan of action? Like, how do you want to collaborate with it? If you want to collaborate with the existing CROs, you're going to get a minimal data from them. But how are you going to get a huge database from countries like they exist like 140, 150 billion population?
Okay, can you do 1 minute? And then we have a group photo, and so we'll get everybody out here right on time.
Very shortly, that's why we're trying to push towards sourcing the data directly from the patient engagement, blockchain. This is, I would think, very early prototyping right now, but the idea is if that data lives securely on a central location, which is accessible from anywhere, and where the data access is controlled by the patient, then you can start building that database. And you also erasing the barriers between different providers. You can link, if the patient says, yes, sure, I want to share my data that is in this hospital and this outpatient facility, and then we can pull that if all that data is hosted on that central repository. I think we are years away from that, but that's also an interesting avenue to pursue because it would really enable that large data collection that should be to enable AI.
Thank you. Thanks. Sorry to cut you off short. Wonderful discussion. If everyone could please move to this side of the room, we are going to do a group photo to capture our launch event here. Thank you for being such a gracious and wonderful audience.